The
This is a
transport
delicacy
pod shook
from my
violently
world,
as it
steamed in
tore
our
through the
traditional
alien
way.
Smells
sky.
incredible. How do you eat
Flames
it?
licked
Here,
at the
try it.
windows
Thank you.
and black smoke
Your
poured
rule
from the
ends here.
engines.
Foolish. You
Inside the
challenge
tiny
powers
craft,
beyond your comprehension.
Dr.
We
Jake
will not
Morrison gripped his
yield.
seat with white knuckles. Everything had gone wrong. What was supposed to be a simple research mission to collect soil samples had turned into a nightmare when his ship's navigation system failed near this uncharted planet. The ground rushed up to meet him fast. Too fast. Jake closed his eyes and hoped death would be quick. The impact threw him forward against his restraints. Metal screamed and twisted. Glass shattered. Then everything went dark. When Jake opened his eyes again, he wasn't sure if he was alive or dead. His whole body hurt. Blood ran down his face from a cut on his forehead. Through blurry vision, he saw purple grass swaying around him. 2 suns hung in a pale orange sky. Definitely not Earth. He tried to move, but pain shot through his ribs. Probably broken. His right leg was trapped under a piece of the pod's hull. Jake coughed and tasted blood. This was bad. Really bad. Even if he could free himself, he had no idea where he was, or this planet even had breathable air for long. His suit's oxygen reserve was already hissing from a crack in the tank. A shadow fell over him. Jake's heart jumped into his throat. The creature standing above him was massive, easily 8 feet tall, covered in violet scales that caught the double sunlight like polished metal. Golden eyes with vertical pupils stared down at him. The alien's face was somewhere between reptilian and humanoid, with sharp features and a strong jaw. Scars crisscrossed her arms and neck. She wore dark armor that looked both ceremonial and battle-worn. A wicked curved blade hung at her hip. Jake had studied dozens of alien species in his career, but he'd never seen anything like this. She looked like she could tear him apart without breaking a sweat. "You're far from your world, human," the alien said. Jake's surprise at hearing English almost made him forget his pain. Her accent was thick, rolling the consonants in a way that suggested her mouth wasn't built for his language, but every word was clear and precise. You speak English?" Jake managed to croak out. The alien tilted her head slightly. "Your species broadcasts everything into space. Television, radio, music, very loud, very chaotic. We have been listening for years. I am Commander Kira of the Velcaran Defense Force." Velcaran. Jake searched his memory. He'd never heard of them. That meant Earth's deep space probes hadn't made it this far yet. Or they had. The data hadn't made it back. First contact with an unknown species. Under any other circumstance, this would be the greatest moment of his life. Right now, it might be his last. Kira crouched beside him, her movement precise and controlled like a predator. She examined his injuries with those unsettling golden eyes. "Your vessel is destroyed. You are injured. Alone. This planet does not welcome the weak." Jake's chest tightened. He'd heard stories from other explorers. Some alien worlds had strict survival of the fittest cultures. Crashed pilots were sometimes killed on sight or worse, sold to slavers who traded in rare species. Humans were definitely rare out here, millions of light years from home. But Jake hadn't studied xenobiology and alien cultures for nothing. In his research, he'd come across a Velcaran database fragment recovered from a derelict probe. It mentioned their customs, their warrior code. He'd memorized what little information was available, never thinking he'd actually use it. With trembling hands, despite the pain screaming through his body, Jake pressed his right fist to his left shoulder and bowed his head forward as much as his injuries allowed. It was a Velcaran gesture of gratitude and respect, shown from a warrior who had been saved in battle to the one who saved them. The effect was immediate. Kira's eyes went wide. Her scales rippled in a way that suggested shock. She stood up straight, staring at him like he'd just performed magic. "How do you know this?" she demanded. "Studied, your people." Jake gasped. "In case we ever met." Wanted to show respect. For a long moment, Kira said nothing. Jake could hear other voices in the distance. More Velcarans approaching. Heavy footsteps. The clank of armor and weapons. "Commander!" A gruff voice called out. "Is it alive?" 3 more Velcarans emerged from the purple vegetation. All warriors. All armed. They looked at Jake with expressions that ranged from curiosity to disgust. "A human," one of them sneered. "Scrawny thing. Probably won't survive the night anyway." We should contact the traders, another suggested. The Krell Syndicate pays well for exotic species. Humans are rare this far out. Jake's blood ran cold. He'd heard of the Krell, slavers, pirates. They bought and sold sentient beings across the galaxy. If these Velcarans sold him, he'd spend whatever remained of his life in a cage or worse. Kira held up one clawed hand. No. The other warriors looked at her in confusion. Commander, the first one questioned. This human will come with me, Kira stated firmly. He is now under my protection. He is my ward. Ward. Jake didn't know exactly what that meant in Velcaran culture, but it sounded better than being sold to slavers. A ward? The gruff warrior laughed. Commander, with respect, look at it. Humans are weak, soft skin, small, no claws, no natural weapons. It will be dead within a week. This is beneath you. Another step forward. The others will question your judgment, Kira. Taking in such a pathetic creature, what purpose does it serve? Kira's hand dropped to the hilt of her blade. The movement was casual, but the threat was crystal clear. The air seemed to grow heavier. The other Velcarans tensed. He is under my protection now, Kira repeated, her voice low and dangerous. He showed knowledge of our ways. He gave the gesture of gratitude, something no outsider has ever learned. That shows intelligence, resourcefulness. These are not traits of the weak. She looked at each of her warriors in turn. Challenge this decision, and you challenge me. Directly. Here. Now. No one moved. No one spoke. Jake had seen enough nature documentaries to recognize a dominance display. Kira wasn't just a commander. She was an alpha predator, and her warriors knew better than to push her. Free him from the wreckage, Kira ordered. Carefully. He is injured. Bring medical supplies. The warriors obeyed without another word of protest. As they worked to lift the debris off Jake's leg, he looked up at Kira. She watched over the process with intense focus, making sure her warriors didn't handle him too roughly. Thank you, Jake whispered. Kira's golden eyes met his. Do not thank me yet. Human, you are alive, but survival here requires more than just breath in your lungs. You will need to prove your worth. Can you do that? Jake thought about Earth. Now so far away he'd never see again, even if he lived 100 years. He thought about his destroyed ship and failed mission, everything he'd lost. But he was still breathing, still thinking. And humans, if nothing else, were survivors. Yes, he said, I can. Kira's expression might have been a smile. It was hard to tell with her alien features. Good. Then perhaps you will surprise them all, Dr. Jake Morrison. She remembered his name. That small detail gave Jake the strangest sense of hope as darkness crept in at the edges of his vision, and unconsciousness finally claimed him. 3 weeks had passed since Jake's crash landing, and life in Kira's fortress compound had become a strange new routine. The massive stone structure sat on a cliff overlooking violet forests and crystalline rivers. It was beautiful in an alien way, but Jake rarely had time to appreciate the view. He was too busy being the compound's main source of entertainment. Everywhere he went, Velcaran warriors stared. Some laughed. Others whispered among themselves, pointing at him like he was an exotic animal in a zoo. Look at its skin, one young warrior said during breakfast in the common hall. So pink and soft, like a newborn grub. I heard humans have no scales at all, another replied. One good strike, and they just split open. Pathetic. Jake tried to ignore them as he ate something that tasted like spicy clay, but was apparently nutritious for both Velcarans and humans. Kira had made sure the medical staff tested everything before letting him eat. She took her role as a protector seriously, even if her people didn't understand why. The medical ward had become Jake's second home. His ribs were healing thanks to Velcaran medicine, which was surprisingly advanced. The doctors were fascinated by his human physiology, constantly scanning him and asking questions. How did his bones repair themselves? Why was his blood red instead of blue? Could he really survive on such little protein? But outside the medical wing, respect was hard to come by. Warriors challenged him to arm wrestling matches he always lost. They asked him to demonstrate human strength by lifting weights he couldn't budge. Every failure brought more laughter. Maybe we should get him a pet. One warrior suggested loudly. Something small he could actually fight. A scrubbit, perhaps? Scrubbits were rabbit-sized creatures that Velcaran children kept as pets. The insult was clear. Jake kept his head down and his mouth shut. Getting angry wouldn't help. These warriors had trained their whole lives for combat. He was a scientist who'd spent most of his career in laboratories. He couldn't match them in strength or speed. That was just reality. But reality was about to change. On the 21st day, Commander Blake arrived at the fortress. Blake was Kira's rival, a massive Velcaran with dark red scales and a scar that ran from his eye down to his jaw. He commanded the Northern Legion and had a reputation for being ruthless and traditional. Jake was in the training yard, watching warriors practice their combat forms. When Blake's transport landed, the commander stepped out surrounded by his personal guard, all of them looking like they could tear through steel with their bare hands. Blake strode directly to where Kira was overseeing training exercises. His voice boomed across the yard. "Kira, I've heard disturbing rumors. They say you've taken in a human as your ward. I didn't believe it until now." Every warrior stopped what they were doing. This was going to be interesting. Kira turned to face Blake, her expression calm but her scales darkening slightly, a sign Jake had learned meant she was annoyed. "Commander Blake, your visit wasn't scheduled. State your business." Blake gestured toward Jake dismissively. "That is my business. This creature. You parade it around your fortress, giving protection and resources. It weakens your reputation. Kira, the other commanders are questioning your judgment. My judgment is not their concern. It is when it affects our entire military structure." Blake's voice rose. "We are warriors. We do not coddle the weak. This human serves no purpose. It cannot fight. It cannot contribute. It is a liability." Jake felt dozens of eyes on him. His heart pounded. He'd known this was coming eventually. The Velcarans respected strength above all else. To them, he was just dead weight. Blake stepped closer to Kira. "Prove this human has worth, or surrender to the slavers. At least then it would serve some economic purpose. The Krell are offering substantial credits for exotic specimens." Kira's hand moved toward her blade. "Jake is under my protection. That is not negotiable. Then prove he deserves that protection." Blake challenged. "Submit him to the trial of worth. Let him face a warrior in the arena. If he survives, I'll never question your decision again. If he fails, he goes to the slavers. Those are my terms." The trial of worth. Jake had heard warriors talking about it. It was a combat test used to determine if someone was worthy of joining a military unit. Brutal, unforgiving. Most who failed ended up in the medical ward for weeks. Some would make it out at all. Kira's jaw tightened. The trial is for Velcaran warriors, not... "I'll do it," Jake said. The entire training yard went silent. Even the wind seemed to stop. Kira turned to him sharply. "Jake, no. You don't understand what you were..." "I'll take the trial of worth," Jake repeated, stepping forward. His voice was steadier than he felt. "If that's what it takes to prove I belong here, I'll do it." Blake laughed, a deep rumbling sound. "The human has courage. I'll give it that. Suicidal courage, but courage nonetheless." "Very well. The trial will commence at sunset. Prepare yourself. Human, you'll need it." As Blake walked away, Kira grabbed Jake's arm and pulled him aside. "What are you thinking?" she hissed. "Humans don't fight Velcarans. You'll be killed." "Maybe," Jake admitted. "But if I don't do this, what happens?" Blake won't stop. Neither will the others. Eventually, you'll have to choose between your reputation and keeping me safe. I won't let you make that choice. This isn't about reputation. Yes, it is. And it's about respect. I'm tired of being treated like a pet. Kira, I'm tired of the stares and the whispers. If I'm going to survive on this planet, I need to show them I'm more than just some weak alien you rescued. Kira studied his face for a long moment. Finally, her shoulders sagged slightly. "You are stubborn, like rock root that refuses to be pulled from the ground." Is that a Velcaran compliment? "Sometimes." She sighed. "If you truly intend to do this, then listen carefully. You cannot beat a Velcaran warrior through strength. You will need to be smart. Use everything around you. Fight like a human, not like one of us. Jake nodded. I know what I'm doing. Trust me. Those words hung between them as the suns moved across the sky and sunset approached. The arena was a circular pit surrounded by stone seats filled with warriors who'd come to watch the spectacle. Jake stood in the center, wearing light combat padding that Kira had insisted he use. Across from him was his opponent, a warrior named Torval, who stood at least 7.5 feet tall with arms like tree trunks. Torval grinned, showing rows of sharp teeth. Try to last more than 30 seconds. Human, give them a good show. The horn sounded. The trial began. Torval charged immediately, exactly as Jake expected. Velcarans fought with overwhelming force and aggression. It was their way. Jake dove to the side at the last second. Torval's claws scraped the stone where Jake had been standing. The crowd booed. They wanted blood, not dodging. Stand and fight, someone shouted. But Jake wasn't interested in what they wanted. He was interested in surviving. Torval charged again. This time Jake rolled under the swing and came up near one of the arena's support pillars. During his weeks in the compound, he'd watched dozens of training matches in this arena. He'd noticed that the northern pillar had loose bolts in its base, probably from years of warriors being slammed against it. Jake needed to make Torval hit that pillar. Hard. He taunted the warrior, something Kira had told him was considered dishonorable but not illegal in the trial. Is that all you've got? My grandmother moves faster, and she's been dead for 10 years. Torval roared and rushed forward with even more fury. Jake waited until the last possible moment, then dropped flat to the ground. Torval couldn't stop his momentum. He crashed into the support pillar with tremendous force. The bolts gave way. The beam shifted, and Torval stumbled backward, dazed. Jake didn't waste the opportunity. He grabbed a piece of loose grating from the arena floor, something left over from maintenance work, and wedged it under Torval's feet as the warrior tried to regain balance. Torval went down hard, his head cracking against the stone. The arena fell silent. Jake stood there, breathing hard, his ribs aching and blood dripping from a cut on his arm he'd scraped against the rough ground. But he was standing. Torval wasn't. The silence stretched for what felt like an eternity. Then someone started clapping, slowly at first. Then others joined in. The applause grew into cheers and roars of approval. Blake descended into the arena, his expression unreadable. He looked at the fallen Torval, then at Jake, then at the damaged pillar. Your human fights like water, Blake said to Kira, who had rushed to the arena's edge. It flows around strength instead of meeting it head-on. Unusual, but effective. He turned to Jake. You did not fight with honor. You used tricks and environment. You avoided direct combat. Jake's heart sank. Had he misunderstood the rules? But then Blake's scarred face split into something that might have been a smile. You fought like a survivor, like someone who refuses to die despite impossible odds. That is worth respecting. Kira jumped into the arena and placed her hand on Jake's shoulder. The gesture was protective but also proud. Humans are survivors, she announced to the crowd. Never underestimate that. The warriors cheered again, and for the first time since arriving on Velcara Prime, Jake didn't feel like a curiosity or a pet. He felt like he might actually have a chance at belonging here. The seasons changed on Velcara Prime, and with them, so did Jake's life. What started as simple survival had grown into something far more meaningful. For months after his trial of worth, he'd earned a place among the warriors, not as one of them exactly, but as something unique, a human perspective in a Velcaran world. It started small. A young warrior named Vex approached Jake in the training yard one morning, curiosity overcoming pride. The way you fought Torval, Vex said hesitantly, using the arena itself as a weapon. We don't train that way. Could you teach me? Jake blinked in surprise. You want to learn from me? Commander Blake said you fought like water. I want to understand what that means. Word spread quickly. Soon Jake had a small group of warriors meeting him twice a week in a side training room. He taught them everything he knew about human military strategy, guerrilla warfare tactics, how smaller forces could defeat larger ones through hit-and-run attacks, endurance strategies, using an opponent's strength against them by making them waste energy. psychological operations, getting into an enemy's head before the first blow was even thrown. The Velcarans were fascinated. Their entire culture was built on direct confrontation and overwhelming force. The idea that you could win without being the strongest was revolutionary to them. On Earth, Jake explained during one session, we had a saying, the bigger they are, the harder they fall. Humans learned early that we weren't the fastest or strongest species on our planet. We survived by being clever, by adapting, by never giving up even when everything said we should. Kira attended many of these sessions, watching from the back of the room. And when Jake's lessons were done, she would take over, teaching him Velcaran combat forms. The movements were difficult for his human body to replicate. His joints didn't bend quite the same way, and he lacked their natural weapons. But he learned to adapt the techniques, making them work for his frame. Language lessons happened during their walks through the fortress gardens. Kira taught him Velcaran words. The proper way to pronounce the clicking sounds his throat wasn't designed to make, the subtle meanings behind scale color changes that serve as body language for her people. Your scales darken when Blake challenged you, Jake observed one evening. What does that mean exactly? Anger, aggression. When we prepare for combat, our scales darken to absorb impact better. It's instinctive. We cannot always control it. And when they lighten, like now, Kira glanced down at her arms, where her violet scales had taken on an almost lavender hue. Contentment, peace, emotions we don't often discuss in military settings. Jake smiled. Your secret's safe with me. The cultural lessons went both ways. Kira was endlessly curious about Earth, asking questions late into the night about human history, art, music, and traditions. Jake told her about oceans she'd never see, mountains that existed only in his memory now. Cities full of humans go about their lives unaware that one of their own was millions of light years away. Your people created weapons capable of destroying your entire planet, Kira said one evening as they shared fermented Nira fruit in her private quarters. The fruit had a sweet, tangy taste that made Jake's head feel pleasantly light. Yet you also created music and poetry. You are a contradiction. Humans contain multitudes, Jake agreed, taking another piece of the fruit. We're capable of terrible things and beautiful things, sometimes in the same day. They sat in comfortable silence for a while, looking out the large window that overlooked the fortress grounds. 3 moons hung in the night sky, casting silver light across the landscape. Can I ask you something? Jake said quietly. Always. Why did you really save me? That first day when I crashed. You could have let your warriors take me to the slavers. Would have been easier, less complicated. But you didn't. Why? Kira's scales rippled, a wave of color change that Jake had learned meant she was feeling something deep. She didn't answer right away. Instead, she stared out at the moons, searching for the right words. When you tried our gratitude gesture, she finally said, lying there broken and bleeding in the purple grass, you showed respect. More than that, you showed you'd taken time to learn about my people even when you had no reason to think you'd ever meet us. That spoke of curiosity, intelligence, courage. She turned to look at him directly, her golden eyes reflecting the moonlight. Most species in this galaxy see Velcarans as monsters. We're too tall, too strong, too aggressive. They fear us. They whisper about our warrior culture, like it makes us savages. But you looked at me and saw a person, not a monster, just someone different from you. Jake felt his chest tighten with emotion. You're not monsters. You're warriors with honor. There's a difference. Your species nearly destroyed itself in war, Kira said. Your planet is gone because of it. Yet you still believe in honor? How? Jake looked out at the alien stars, constellations he'd never seen from Earth. Yeah, Earth's gone. Everyone I knew, everyone I loved, all of it, gone. Wiped out in wars we couldn't stop fighting. His voice caught slightly. Even months later, the grief was still fresh. Maybe that's exactly why honor matters more now. It's all I have left from home. The idea that even in violence, even in conflict, there can be rules. Lines we don't cross. Respect for the opponent. If I let go of that, I let go of the last piece of what made me human. Kira's clawed hand moved slowly, carefully, until it covered his. Her palm was warm, her scale smooth under his fingers. "Not all you have," she said softly. The moment stretched between them, heavy with meaning neither of them quite knew how to name. But fate had a way of testing bonds right when they were forming. 3 days later, Jake woke up feeling wrong. His head pounded. His muscles ached. Fever burned through him like fire in his veins. The Fortress medical staff diagnosed it quickly. Crimson fever, a local disease that occasionally jumped from Velcarans to other species. Usually not fatal, but dangerous for someone whose immune system had never encountered it before. Jake spent the next 72 hours in a medical bay bed, drifting in and out of consciousness. Fever dreams plagued him. He saw Earth burning, heard voices of friends calling his name, felt the transport pod crashing over and over again. Through it all, one constant remained, Kira. She refused to leave his bedside. When the medical staff suggested she return to her duties, she threatened to demote them. When Blake sent messages about urgent military matters, she ignored them. Nothing mattered except the human fighting for his life in that bed. On the second day, when Jake's fever spiked to dangerous levels, Kira personally flew to the Highland Mountains, a region filled with predators and treacherous terrain. She hunted for silver fern, a rare plant that grew only in the most dangerous areas. The medical staff could synthesize medicine, but the natural plant worked faster. She returned 18 hours later, scratched and exhausted, carrying enough silver fern to treat a dozen patients. The medicine worked. Slowly, painfully, Jake's fever began to break. When he finally opened his eyes with clarity for first time in 3 days, the first thing he saw was Kira slumped in a chair beside his bed, still in her hunting gear, dry blood on her armor from whatever she'd fought in the mountains. She'd fallen asleep, watching over him. Jake's hand moved weakly, finding hers. Kira's eyes snapped open immediately. "Jake, you're awake. How do you feel?" "Like I got hit by a transport shuttle," he croaked. "But alive, thanks to you. The doctors did most of the work. The doctors didn't fly into the most dangerous region on the planet to get medicine for me. That was all you." Kira's scales shifted through several colors, emotions playing across her features faster than Jake could track. "You are mine to protect," she said, and her voice was fierce but also tender. "I would have flown into the heart of a star if that's what it took." Jake squeezed her hand as much as his weak grip would allow. "Thank you for everything, for saving me that first day, for protecting me, for becoming my friend." Friend. Kira repeated the word like she was testing its weight. Her expression softened into something Jake had never seen before. Vulnerability. "I think," she said quietly, "it has become more than that. You are mine to protect, yes, but I think I am yours as well. To protect, to care for, to stand beside." Their bond had become something neither of their species had words for. Not quite friendship, deeper than alliance, different from anything either of them had experienced before. But both of them understood it perfectly. Two beings from different worlds, finding connection in the vast loneliness of space. Jake smiled weakly. "I can live with that." "Good," Kira said, and for the first time since he'd known her, she smiled fully. "Because you're not getting rid of me. Wouldn't dream of it." Outside the window, the 3 moons set, and twin suns began to rise over Velcara Prime, painting the sky in shades of orange and gold. A new day, a new beginning. Together, Station Outreach floated in neutral space, a massive hub where dozens of species met for trade and diplomacy. It was considered safe ground, protected by treaties that had held for over a century. No weapons except ceremonial ones. No violence. No military actions. Jake had been nervous about coming here, but Kira insisted he accompany her to the diplomatic function. "You need to see how galactic politics work," she'd said. "Besides, I want them to see you, to understand that humans are more than rumors and myths." The Grand Hall was filled with aliens of every shape and size. Insectoid traders from the Chittick Collective, gaseous beings from the nebula corridors floating in containment suits, even a few crystalline life forms that communicated through light patterns. Jake stayed close to Kira, overwhelmed by the sheer diversity of life in the galaxy. Kira was in the middle of negotiating a trade agreement with a delegate from the Outer Rings when her communication device buzzed. She glanced at it, expecting a routine message from a fortress. Her entire body went rigid. Jake noticed immediately. "Kira? What's wrong?" She didn't answer. Her scales were shifting, darkening rapidly from violet to deep purple to almost black. Around them, other delegates began backing away, recognizing the signs of a Valkyrian entering combat mode. "Kira, talk to me. What happened?" She turned to him, and Jake had never seen such fury in her eyes. Pure, undiluted rage that made him take an involuntary step back. "They took you," she said, her voice shaking with barely controlled violence. "What? I'm right here." "Not you?" The you that was supposed to be on the transport back to the fortress. The transport that left an hour ago. Jake's blood went cold. He'd changed his plans at the last minute, deciding to stay at the function instead of taking the early transport back. He'd sent a message to the fortress, but in the chaos of the event, maybe it hadn't been received. Kira held up her device. The message was short and brutal. "Commander Kira, the human called Jake Morrison has been taken by Krell Syndicate forces. Transport intercepted in Sector 7. Crew eliminated. Human cargo secured. Ransom demands to follow." "Oh no," Jake whispered. "Kira, I'm here. I'm safe. It's a mistake." But Kira wasn't listening. Her mind was already somewhere else, somewhere dark and violent. Her second in command, a warrior named Rax, rushed over from across the hall. "Commander, I just received the same message. We need to verify." "Assemble the Talon unit," Kira interrupted, her voice like shattered glass. "Full weapons authorization. Every available fighter. We leave within the hour." "Commander, wait. Look, Jake is right here. There's been some kind of mistake." Kira blinked, and for the first time seemed to actually see Jake standing in front of her. The rage in her eyes flickered, confusion replacing it for just a moment. "You're here," she said. "Yes. I changed my plans. I stayed at the function. The transport was supposed to be empty except for crew. Rax was already working his communication device, pulling up information. His face went pale, which was impressive for someone with blue scales. "Commander, the transport manifest shows one passenger, listed as Jake Morrison. But if he's here, understanding crashed over all of them at once. Someone had falsified the manifest. Someone had made it look like Jake was on that transport specifically, so the Krell would intercept it. But who?" The answer came in the form of a second message, this one directly to Kira's private channel. She opened it, and Jake watched her expression shift from confusion to absolute fury. The message contained a video. It showed a young human male, maybe early 20s, unconscious in a Krell holding cell. He had brown hair and similar build to Jake. Not identical, but close enough in the grainy footage. A voice spoke over the image. "Commander Kira, we have your human pet. 20,000 credits by tomorrow, or we sell him to the highest bidder. You have 12 hours to decide if your reputation is worth the price." The video ended with coordinates for the payment transfer. "That's not me," Jake said unnecessarily. "That's someone else. Another human. But where did they even find another human out here?" Rax was already searching databases. There was a colony ship, the Frontier Dream, went missing 6 months ago in the Outer Territories, listed as lost with all hands. 200 passengers, half of them human. "Not all hands lost," Kira said quietly. "The Krell found them, salvaged them, have been holding them in secret to sell as exotic slaves." The implications hit Jake like a physical blow. There were other humans out here, prisoners, being sold like property, and the Krell had grabbed one, thinking it was him, trying to extort Kira. "We need to verify this," Rax said carefully. "Confirm the human in that video is really from the colony ship. Then we can file a formal complaint with the Galactic Council." "No." Kira's voice cut through the hall. Her scales were now completely black, and her eyes burned with something primal and terrifying. "No ransom. No negotiation. No council bureaucracy that will take months while they debate jurisdiction. Commander, if we attack a Krell station without proper authorization, it could start a sector war." "I don't care." The words came out with such cold finality that Rax actually stepped back. Kira turned to face her second-in-command fully. They thought they took what is mine. They didn't, but that almost doesn't matter. They were willing to. They attacked a transport under Valkyrian protection. They killed my crew, and that human in their cell, whoever he is, doesn't deserve to be in a cage waiting to be sold. Commander, please think about this. I've thought about it. Kira's hand went to her blade. The Krell Syndicate has operated in the shadows for too long. Stealing, murdering, trafficking sentient beings. Today they made their biggest mistake. They touched something under my protection. That ends now. She pulled up her command interface and began issuing orders. I want complete intelligence on every Krell operation in 3 systems. Every station, every ship, every known associate. Access every contact we have, criminal or otherwise. Call in every favor. I don't care what it costs. Kira, Jake said softly, putting a hand on her arm. I'm okay. I'm right here. We can handle this through proper channels. She looked at him, and the raw emotion in her eyes made his breath catch. It wasn't just anger. It was fear, the bone-deep terror of almost losing something precious. They thought you were on that transport, she said. For 3 minutes, I believed you were gone, taken, in a Krell cell being prepared for auction. Do you understand what that did to me? Jake had no words. I would have burned the galaxy to find you, Kira continued, her voice breaking slightly. Every station, every planet. I would have gone through the Krell Syndicate, like a storm, until nothing remained but ash and memory. She pulled away from his hand and turned back to Rax. We leave within the hour. Talon unit, full deployment. And Rax. Yes, Commander? Tell the pilots no restraint protocols. If a Krell ship runs, we pursue. If they fight, we eliminate. If they surrender... Her smile was sharp and cruel. We eliminate them anyway. The Syndicate needs to learn what happens when you threaten the Valkyrians bonded. Bonded. She'd said the word publicly, in front of delegates from a dozen species. There would be no taking it back. Rax saluted and ran to carry out his orders. Jake stood there in the diplomatic hall, surrounded by shocked alien delegates, watching Kira coordinate what was essentially a one-woman war against one of the most dangerous criminal organizations in the sector. And she was doing it not because they'd actually taken him, but because they'd tried. Because somewhere in the cell was another human who deserved freedom. Because the Krell needed to learn a lesson about consequences. A delegate from the Chittick Collective approached cautiously, mandibles clicking nervously. Commander Kira, surely you don't mean to violate neutral space treaties. The Krell violated them first when they attacked my transport in Sector 7. I'm simply responding in kind. The Council will have to intervene. Kira's laugh was sharp and humorless. Let them try. Within 40 minutes, Kira had assembled more information than Jake thought possible. The Krell Syndicate operated from 14 known stations across 3 systems. They had a main headquarters on a heavily fortified asteroid base in the Krell home system. They had connections to corrupt officials in at least 6 governments. None of it would save them. Kira suited up in full combat armor, weapons strapped to every available surface. She looked like death itself, beautiful and terrifying. Stay here, she told Jake. Rax will assign guards. No. She turned to him, surprised. I'm coming with you, Jake said firmly. Absolutely not. This will be dangerous. That human in the cell, the one they thought was me, he's scared and alone and probably thinks no one's coming for him. When you break him out, he should see another human face. Someone who can tell him he's safe now, that he's going home. Kira stared at him for a long moment. Then, despite everything, a small smile crossed her face. You are either the bravest person I've ever met or the most foolish. Can it be both? She pulled him into a brief, fierce embrace. Stay behind me. Do exactly as I say. And Jake, yeah. When this is over, we're having a serious discussion about you giving me heart attacks. Together, they boarded the assault ship. As it pulled away from station outreach, Kira sent one final message to the Krell Syndicate. No words, just coordinates for the human in their cell, and a countdown timer. 12 hours, just like they'd given her. Except when her countdown hit 0, it wouldn't be a ransom payment arriving. It would be her. The Krell stronghold sat in the heart of an asteroid field, hidden among thousands of floating rocks. It was a fortress built over decades, with automated defense systems, multiple shield layers, and enough firepower to hold off a small fleet. The Syndicate had spent years making it impenetrable. Kira destroyed the outer defenses in 17 minutes. Her assault ship came in fast and low, weaving through the asteroid with precision that made her pilot nervous. "Commander, they're locking weapons on us." Evasive Pattern 7. Now! The ship rolled hard, left as plasma fire streaked past. Kira was already in the deployment bay, checking her weapons one final time. Jake stood beside her, wearing borrowed Velcaran armor that didn't quite fit his human frame. "Remember," Kira said without looking at him, "stay behind me. Don't try to be a hero," says the person about to assault a fortress alone. "I'm not alone. I have you." The ship shuddered as it breached the station's hangar bay, tearing through security doors like paper. Before the Krell guards could respond, Kira was already moving. She hit the ground running, blade in one hand and plasma pistol in the other. The first 3 guards went down before they could raise their weapons. Jake followed close behind, staying in her shadow just like she'd instructed. But something was different about how Kira fought. The Krell had studied Velcaran combat tactics for years. They knew to expect overwhelming force, direct assaults, honorable face-to-face combat. That's not what they got. Kira disappeared into the shadows of the corridor, using the station's maintenance tunnels that Jake had identified from stolen schematics. She set traps using the station's own equipment. When guards came to investigate strange noises, they found their comrades strung up in ways that didn't make sense. Some were taken down from behind, others from above. A few simply vanished, their weapons left behind. "What is she doing?" one Krell officer demanded over the security channel. "Velcarans don't fight like this." But Kira had learned from the best. Every guerrilla tactic Jake had taught his students back on Velcara Prime. She was using now. Misdirection, psychological warfare, making the enemy afraid of shadows. She'd leave one guard alive deliberately, let him run back to his unit, spreading fear. "There's something in the corridors. It's hunting us." The Krell Syndicate leadership watched through security cameras as their impenetrable fortress became a hunting ground. They'd studied Velcaran military doctrine extensively. They knew how to counter it. They hadn't studied human warfare. "Send everything to the detention level," the Syndicate leader ordered. "Protect the merchandise." "She's coming for the human." He was right. Kira was coming, but not the way they expected. She cut the power to sections of the station, plunging corridors into darkness. Her Velcaran eyes adapted instantly. The Krell stumbled blind. She moved through them like a ghost, taking down guards without making a sound. Jake stayed close, his heart pounding. He'd taught these tactics in theory, in training exercises. Watching Kira use them for real was terrifying and beautiful at the same time. They reached the detention level after cutting through 3 security checkpoints. Bodies littered the corridors behind them. Kira had given the Krell every chance to surrender. None had taken it. The detention level was a long hallway lined with cells. Most were empty. A few held prisoners of various species, all looking malnourished and hopeless. At the far end, in the reinforced cell, was a young human from a video. But something was wrong. The cell door was open. 2 Krell guards lay dead on the floor, their own shock batons protruding from their bodies. And standing over them, breathing hard and covered in blood, was the human prisoner. He'd improvised a blade from the cell bars somehow, twisting the metal until it broke free and fashioning it into a crude weapon. His face was bruised, one eye swollen shut, but he was standing, fighting, refusing to give up. Jake felt a surge of pride. Even captured and alone, this human hadn't quit. The young man looked up at them, his good eye widening at the sight of another human. You're real. I thought I was hallucinating." "Very real," Jake said, stepping forward. "I'm Jake. What's your name?" "Tyler. Tyler Chun. From the colony ship Frontier Dream." The Krell, They attacked us 6 months ago. Most of us died. The rest, he gestured at the empty cells. Sold. I was supposed to be next. Kira moved past them, checking the corridor. We need to move. More guard will come. But she paused, looking at Tyler with something like respect. You killed 2 Krell guards with improvised weapons. Impressive for a human. Tyler managed a weak smile, despite his injuries. Yeah, well, we're stubborn like that. I've noticed, Kira said, and Jake could have sworn he saw affection in her glance toward him. They freed the other prisoners quickly, arming them with weapons from the dead guards. A Chittick trader, 2 crystalline beings, even a young Velcaran who'd been captured for refusing to join a mercenary company. Can you all fight? Kira asked. Most nodded. They'd been prisoners long enough. They wanted revenge. Good. Stay together. Follow my lead. We're leaving, and we're burning this place down on our way out. The escape was chaos. Krell reinforcements poured into the detention level, but now they faced not just Kira, but a group of freed prisoners with nothing to lose. Jake found himself shoulder to shoulder with Tyler, both of them using salvage plasma rifles to provide cover fire, while Kira carved a path through the Krell forces. You been out here long? Tyler shouted over the weapon's fire. Few months, Jake replied, taking down a guard who'd gotten too close. Crashed on Velcara Prime. Got lucky. That's the scary alien warrior lady who's destroying everyone? Yeah, she's with me. With you? Tyler looked at him incredulously. How does that even work? It's complicated. I'll explain later. Right now, run. They sprinted through corridors as Kira set demolition charges at key structural points. The station shook with internal explosions. Krell officers tried to organize a defense, but their forces were in disarray. Guards who survived encounters with Kira were too terrified to coordinate effectively. The Syndicate leadership made one final attempt to stop them, sealing the hangar bay doors and flooding the corridor with armed soldiers. Kira didn't slow down. If anything, she moved faster. She became a blur of violet scales and flashing steel, using every technique Jake had taught combined with her natural Velcaran ferocity. Jake and Tyler covered her from behind, while the other freed prisoners protected their flanks. When they finally broke through to the hangar, half the Syndicate's leadership lay dead in their wake. The survivors fled to their ships, trying to escape before the station's reactor went critical from Kira's sabotage. Kira made sure none of them made it. The assault ship lifted off with all the freed prisoners aboard just as the Krell's stronghold exploded in a brilliant flash. Secondary explosions rippled through the asteroid field as other Syndicate installations were caught in the blast. In the aftermath, silence filled the ship. Tyler slumped against the wall, exhausted and overwhelmed. You came for me. I don't even know you, and you came. You're human, Jake said simply. That's enough. We don't leave people in cages, Kira added. Not anymore. The journey back to Velcara Prime took 2 days. Kira spent that time coordinating with other Velcaran commanders, sharing intelligence about the remaining Krell operations. What she'd started would finish. The Syndicate's days were numbered. When they finally arrived home, word had already spread. The entire fortress gathered in the main courtyard. The High Council stood on the raised platform, their expressions grave. Commander Blake was there too, along with dozens of other military leaders. They'd all heard what Kira had done, how she'd violated treaties, attacked without authorization, started what could become a sector-wide conflict. Kira walked through the crowd with Jake at her side. She wore her battle armor still, stained with Krell blood. She looked like a warrior returning from war, because that's exactly what she was. The head of the council, an ancient Velcaran named Elder Vorn, spoke first. Commander Kira, you have acted without authorization, attacked a sovereign station, killed hundreds, started a conflict that may escalate beyond control. Yes, Kira said simply. You show no remorse? None. I would do it again. Murmurs ran through the crowd. The council members shifted uncomfortably. The human beside you, Elder Vorn continued, was not even in danger. Yet you launched a military operation that... Jake Morrison is not my ward, Kira interrupted loudly. Her voice carried across the entire courtyard. He never was. That was a convenient fiction to protect him when he first arrived. She turned to face the assembled crowd, making sure everyone could hear. Jake Morrison is my bonded, equal in status, partner in battle, under my eternal protection. He is mine and I am his. This is my formal declaration before the High Council and all witnesses. The crowd erupted in shocked whispers. Bonded was sacred in Velcaran culture. It meant a connection deeper than family, stronger than military loyalty. It was rare, even among their own people. Unheard of with an alien. Elder Vorn's eyes widened. You bond with a human? This is permitted under our law, Kira stated. There is no restriction on species, only that both parties consent, and the bond is true. I have spoken. Any who dispute my right to make this declaration may challenge me in the circle of combat. The circle of combat. Single combat to the death. The traditional way Velcaran settled disputes that words couldn't resolve. Nobody moved. Nobody spoke. Even Blake, who challenged her decision to protect Jake before, stayed silent. Kira's reputation as a warrior was too fierce. Her skills too proven. Nobody was willing to face her in the circle. Then it is witnessed, Elder Vorn said quietly. Jake Morrison, human, is recognized as Kira's bonded. This council acknowledges it. Jake stood there, overwhelmed. He'd known their connection was deep, but hearing it declared publicly, officially, made it real in a way he hadn't anticipated. Kira's hand found his, her clawed fingers intertwining with his carefully. Together, she said softly, just for him. Always, Jake answered. The crowd began to disperse. Conversations erupting everywhere. Tyler and the other freed prisoners watched in amazement. They'd been rescued by someone who'd burned down a criminal empire, not for profit or glory, but because they'd threatened what she loved. Later that evening, as the twin sun set over Velcara Prime, Jake and Kira stood on her balcony overlooking the fortress grounds. You started a war for me, Jake said quietly. I ended a criminal organization that deserved ending, Kira corrected. That it was for you simply made it personal. The Council won't forget this easily. Let them remember. Let the whole galaxy remember. She turned to face him fully. You asked me once why I saved you. I told you it was because you showed respect. But that was only part of the truth. What's the rest? I saved you because some part of me knew, even then, that you would change everything. That you would become the most important thing in my world. Her scales rippled with emotion. I was right. Jake pulled her close, this fierce alien warrior who'd burned the world for him. I love you. I know our species don't have the same words for it, but that's what this is, love. My people say, Savalta, Kira said softly. It means my heart's fire. Yes, Jake Morrison. I Savalta you too. They stood together as the moons rose, human and Velcaran, bonded in ways that transcended biology or culture. Across the galaxy, the message was spreading. The Krell Syndicate was broken, and everyone knew why. They'd learned what happened when you threatened what a Velcaran warrior held dear. They'd learned that humans might be small and soft, but they inspired loyalty that could move mountains and burn empires. Most importantly, they'd learned that Jake Morrison was untouchable, not because of what he was, but because of who stood beside him, and Kira would stand there forever. Together, always,